everybody. Welcome back to the Maple Leaf podcast. We are, in fact, back here after almost a year, quite a big break. Here we are back again to bring you the best of Canada immigration. We are Kurzfeld Law, a licensed immigration law firm that is based in Canada, servicing you, giving you full service on everything Canadian immigration law. And we've been in the market for over 20 years, servicing from every single service around Canada immigration, and we are here to bring the best expertise to the table. So today we are going to discuss something that's pretty interesting on the lines of Canada immigration, and we have with us our guest on the podcast, who is a resident attorney at Kurzfeld Law. Hey, Tiffany. So we have Tiffany who's joining us. Hey, how are you doing, Tiffany?
Hi, good, thanks. I'm really fine, doing well, and excited to share the new information that we have today.
Interesting. Thank you so much for joining the conversation today. I'm looking forward to having a good conversation along the lines of some of the new updates that we've seen on Canada immigration. So, Tiffany, you very well know that we have the Bill C-12 is now law, and you can tell us a little bit about how does it affect the refugee claims in Canada, because a lot of people are curious about what does this mean in terms of application.
Yeah, for sure, that makes sense. Thank you. This is like the question that we're getting from every single refugee claimant in Canada right now. And so, just for the viewers, like Bill C-12 is this new law. It came into effect on March 26, 2026, so just less than a month ago. And the legislation is called Strengthening Canada's Immigration System and Borders Act. So it made like major changes to Canada's immigration system. So your question is specifically about how it affects the refugee claims. So for refugees, what it has introduced is a new 1 year rule or a limitation for refugee claims. So the important thing though is that it doesn't affect everyone, okay? But the first group that the legislation talks about is whether or not the refugee claimant came to Canada before June 24th, 2020. So if you are a refugee claimant in Canada and you arrived before June 24th, 2020, or if you are thinking about applying for refugee and you entered Canada, your first and only entry to Canada was before June 24th, 2020, this law does not apply to you. Okay, so that doesn't apply to you. The second group it may impact is if you filed your refugee claim before June 3rd, 2025. So if you made a refugee claim before June 3rd, 2025, regardless of when you entered Canada, this law is not going to apply to you either. Okay, so it's going to apply to individuals who entered Canada after June 24th, 2020, and they made a refugee claim after June 3rd, 2025. Okay, so then you'll have to look and see whether or not you filed your refugee claim within 1 year of the time that you entered Canada after June 24th, 2020. So that's where we're telling clients you might want to speak to a lawyer immediately. But the bottom line is that some people might not actually be affected by this. But if you're not sure, we don't want you to guess. We want you to contact and speak to one of our lawyers, and we can kind of guide you further. Okay. Hmm.
Interesting, interesting.
Hmm.
I'm pretty inquisitive. So, what if you are a refugee in Canada and you came more than a year ago to the country and you have not made a claim yet? Like, is it still too late?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a very great question. So, as all lawyers say, it really depends on your specific situation. But I'm going to be honest with you. If you entered Canada after June 24th, 2020, and more than a year has passed since your first entry to Canada, your access or your ability to have a full refugee hearing at the Immigration and Refugee Board that may be affected under this new bill C-12. So it might not necessarily be over if you plan to make your claim for protection because your life is at risk. You would be still, you'll still have an opportunity to file what's called a pre-removal risk assessment application. So it's not over for you yet, but you won't get the full hearing that is normally afforded to refugee claimants at the Immigration and Refugee Board. What you'll have is like a paper application, okay? But you want to still treat this new law very important if you are planning to make your refugee case, but you are outside of the 1 year time frame, right?
Right, right, right. Interesting.
Mhm.
So, Tiffany, can you enlighten me if this is a temporary measure, or how does this work? Like, is it going to be more or less like a permanent one?
Very good question. Very good. So right now, what we're seeing is it's permanent because it came into law, and it is affecting our refugee uh, cases. However, there are a lot of challenges being made to this legislation in federal court. So we're preparing to do a lot of challenges because we would like to see the legislation have certain exceptions. So there are other groups or other situations or circumstances where people were not able to apply within 1 year. Maybe they were dealing with mental health or trauma issues. Maybe the issues relating to why their life is at risk, why they need Canada's protection, didn't happen until a year after when they were in Canada. So we are planning on taking this matter into the federal court, but that will take like a long time. That process to see some changes will take a long time. But for right now, we are treating these, it is law, so it is permanent, right? In terms of whether or not these refugee claimants are eligible to even have a hearing, right? So, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, but it's still tricky, right? Because refugees usually their claim is for protection, and then
Yeah.
it's it's not admissible anymore, isn't it?
Yeah. So what usually happens is in a normal course, if someone is fleeing their country because of persecution, whatever the basis of their persecution is, they enter Canada and they can make their refugee claim right there at the airport before an officer with the Canada Border Services Agency, or they may not know about that. And so then they have to enter Canada and then seek, organizations, access legal advisors, and then prepare their case. And so sometimes making that claim might take a little bit longer than 1 year, or it might be 2 or 3 months later. So I think with this new bill, they're trying to sort of, um, I guess limit, as I mentioned before, limit refugee claimants in terms of, whether they have access to a refugee hearing or not. And it's all about timing. So it really just comes down to timing. But once they're approved, let's say they are eligible and they meet with an immigration and refugee member who decides their case, then they will be protected persons in Canada, and that is permanent for them. They get to stay and they get all the benefits of Canada's protection for them. But until then, they're sort of waiting. They're just refugee claimants. They're waiting, hoping that they're going to get approved, right? And so those are the ones that we're really trying to speak to, the ones who are thinking about applying and the ones who have already applied and the ones who are, waiting, right? Who are waiting and stuck. And now maybe this law is going to affect them for something that happened like almost like 3, 4 years ago, right? So, um, I hope that gives some clarity to our viewers today when they're
Yeah,
watching.
it
Yeah.
makes sense. It makes sense. And I think we are hearing reports from many people who was saying that they've received a letter from the IRCC saying that their refugee claim is ineligible, and we've had a lot of those cases, isn't it, back at the law firm. What should they do right now?
Yeah, good question. Well, the first thing is, don't panic, right? That's the first thing. You get the letter and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's happened to me. Okay, yes, but we don't want you to panic per se. And the second thing is don't ignore the letter, right? So you don't want to say, well, okay, I'll just let the law play out. No, you don't want to do that as well. So both extremes are reactions are not helpful. What we would just let you know is if you receive the letter, then just know that that letter is what we call like a pre-decision. It's a procedural fairness letter. And so the law will give you, the refugee claimant, an opportunity to respond to that letter before they make a final decision as to whether or not, your claim is going to continue at the refugee board or not. So you only have 15 to 21 days is what we're seeing on these letters to respond. So what I would say is, contact, an immigration lawyer immediately if you don't already have one, so that you can prepare a proper response to that letter. There could be mistakes, the date of your entry. There could be explanations as to why you were delayed in making your refugee claim. So you're going to want to make sure that you explain all of that, and in the time frame that immigration gives to you. Okay, you can contact anyone in our office, and we'll definitely guide you and help you with that case.
Yeah, yeah, you need to sort of solidify your case, isn't it? Otherwise, it's not going to work because, to be honest, this is like a do or die sort of a situation,
Yeah.
and there's no room for mistakes. You
Yes.
need to sort of like do the right thing, or you just get out of Canada.
Right.
So I think your advice pretty much makes sense a lot. To reach out to an immigration lawyer, speak to them, understand what can be done in this specific scenario.
Hmm.
Obviously, because immigration lawyers have a lot of experience handling cases of this sort, and they know every nook and crook of like the entire immigration law space, and they'd probably advise you what the best course of action for them is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And for many, just like you said, Omar, like for many of these claimants, it is a life and death situation, right? And so many of them, they don't have a choice. They've chosen Canada, and Canada is a place where they are feeling safe. They feel that they can get refuge here. And so this new change is something that they didn't anticipate. Many of them don't know how to even respond, how to react. So you're absolutely right. They can contact us, and definitely we're the ones who have the expertise in terms of going forward to help them with their case. So that would be the smart move. Even if it's just a consultation, we definitely will be able to steer you in the right direction if you receive that letter for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Hmm.
much, Tiffany, for shedding light on this important subject that's been talked about a lot in the Canadian immigration space these days. Much appreciated for taking your time on this.
Yeah,
The
no
audience,
problem.
whoever is listening, if you have any questions about, B, Bill C-12 or anything regarding refugee claims, you know who to
Hmm.
call. Call us at Kurzfeld Law, and we are there to help you with your immigration law problems all day, every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Looking forward to having a conversation with you again, Tiffany, on the next
Thank you.
podcast. See you. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.